What's up, guys? This is Between the Reps with Brooke Entz and Gina Chancharulo. I'm Brooke Entz, CrossFit Games athlete turn entrepreneur turn actress and now podcaster.
The list keeps going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Gina Chancharulo, and I am just none of those things. But I can be funny sometimes, and I am your best friend. So
on our podcast, we basically talk about all things health, fitness, fashion, honestly, whatever we have going on in our life.
Human stuff. So go check us out.
Wherever you guys get your podcasts, subscribe, download.
And check us out.
Yeah, start listening.
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platte Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. This is Any Given Sunday for Sunday, December 15th, 2019. I am your host, Manny Brown. What's up, everybody? Hopefully you guys had a happy, safe, blessed week. It's been 2 weeks since the last podcast. My apologies for no episode last week. Had a little bit of a family issue, so had to cancel at the last minute. So my apologies for that. Hopefully it's been a minute since we've had a podcast. The last episode was right before Thanksgiving, so hopefully you guys enjoyed your Thanksgiving break. Enjoy some time off with your families. And hopefully you guys had a happy, safe, blessed Thanksgiving, man, for real. Always my favorite time of year with the holidays and everything coming up. So, yeah, man, hopefully you guys are having fun and enjoying your time as we near the end of the year. So happy to be back with another episode of the podcast. My guest this week is a guy that I've been trying to work with for a while now. We've been trying to link up. It seems like for over a year, we've been trying to get this collaboration going, and it's just been, our schedules have been pretty hectic. But I'm glad that we finally were able to connect and hook up and finally get this done. Chris Platte, he is the host of the Strictly Hip Hop and Strictly Hoops podcast. Fellow Dead End podcaster himself. Chris, welcome to Any Given Sunday, man. What's going on?
Man, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to us collaborating for a while. You know, you've been always reaching out and supporting me. We've had so many interactions through Twitter, through Instagram. It's always, this has always been a moment in the making that I've looked forward to. So I'm happy to be here, man. It's the holiday season. We were just discussing, my birthday's around this time too. It's next week. So, this is a good time. This is a good time for me, kind of sit back, reflect on the year, set goals for the next year, and spend time around family.
Absolutely, man. It's the best time of year. Not to get all Christmas sappy, but it is the best time of year. And happy birthday, man. We were just discussing, this man's one of the unfortunate souls that shares a birthday with Jesus Christ around the same time. So I asked him if he felt like his birthday sometimes gets overshadowed by the big man upstairs. He's okay with it now that he's older, but I'm sure when he was a kid, he had probably had some problems.
Yeah. If anybody's going to overshadow me, I'm cool with it being him.
Of course, right? Yeah, of course. But happy birthday, man. If we don't get a chance to wish you a birthday next week sometime, definitely happy birthday, man. And many more years to you. No doubt.
You as well, my man.
Thank you. All right. Well, as always, every time I have a first-time guest on the show, I like to give that guest an opportunity to introduce himself to the audience. The audience may not be familiar with you, your work, your podcast, etc. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and about the podcast.
Okay. Well, I'm Chris Platte, the host of Strictly Hip Hop and Strictly Hoop Talk, 2 podcasts that are on the same feed. One covers the NBA, one covers hip hop, and they're partnered with Dead End and Studio 71, just like this podcast. And
yes, sir.
I've been doing it for years. I started the basketball podcast when I was in high school, and I always loved rap too. And I knew that I wanted to get into rap because rap and basketball have such a similar demographic, and those are just, quite frankly, my 2 biggest passions. Everyone in my life, literally every single person in my life that's not family, is in my life for one of those 2 reasons, either hip hop or basketball. So it just always was the progression, but I had to build up my knowledge of hip hop. So I spent a couple of years studying while I was doing the NBA podcast. And then in 2016, launched the hip hop podcast, and it's been just, growing and building ever since. And it's what I love to do, man. I love to have conversations with people in these two areas. I could talk to anyone, any day, anytime about hip hop and basketball, just whenever.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, you picked hip hop and basketball. I mean, could there be two art forms that are so kind of symbiotic right now as far as hip hop and basketball? I mean, they're just synonymous with each other right now. Really, really for the last 25 years or so, the NBA has embraced hip hop with open arms, and the same for hip hop embracing the NBA. So yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy you got going on there with the two shows, man. What's your favorite show? If I have to put you on the spot right out the gate, what's your favorite podcast to do? Is it the hip hop one? Is it the NBA one? Which one's your favorite?
This is the closest I can relate to, parents saying they haven't a favorite kid. That question, this is the closest I can relate to it right now in my life. But, man, I got to be honest with you, and this is kind of crazy. I didn't expect it to be this way, but I would say I preferred the hip hop more just because of the fact that I'm just as in love with hip hop as basketball. Don't get me wrong. But with hip hop, I enjoy that I can have broader conversations. Yeah. I can have like more, there's just, I think, more conversations to be had rather than a lot of times with the NBA. It's like, okay, what's this team going through and why? There is interesting stuff. There's always interesting stuff in the NBA, but I feel like the conversation scope is more limited. Like in the hip hop podcast, I've interviewed artists that have toured around the world, and then I've interviewed local producers, and I've done album reviews, and I've done all sorts of things, just critical thinking pieces on like streaming and all that. Like, I feel like with hip hop, there's a lot more to be explored, at least in terms of podcast conversation. And the other thing that trips me out is that I think that I've gotten a little bit more acceptance in the hip hop community than I have in the basketball community, which is something I didn't expect. Those of you that don't know, I'm white. And so, I didn't know necessarily. I always wanted to tread hip hop carefully and treat the art form with respect, because I know, it's not of my culture. So, I always wanted to pay it its proper respect, but hip hop has really embraced me a lot more than the NBA. The NBA seems to, the writers and the bloggers, and they all have very strong opinions on what they think is the best. And hip hop is just like, everyone's just seen me come in and be like, man, this guy really appreciates hip hop. And I've just been kind of like a little bit more accepted in that community so far, which has kind of tripped me out.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. With the acceptance over the hip hop community more so than the basketball community. Why do you think that is? I mean, I know you alluded to it a little bit, but like, why do you think that is exactly? Like, because you would think it honestly, for me, I would think it's more of the other way around. You know what I'm saying? The basketball community is a little bit more accepting than the hip hop community, which could be a little bit kind of guarded and defensive about the culture, so to speak. Right. But why do you think that the NBA community has been a little bit hesitant so far?
And I don't want to paint, anything against the NBA.
No, I get it.
But yeah, it's just, some writers are really just, some writers, broadcasters, whatever, are just very strong in their beliefs. I think it's just in sports, hip hop's always a debate, don't get me wrong, but hip hop's always been like you can come to agree to a disagree conclusion, whereas sports is kind of like embedded in sports culture is who is right and who is wrong at the end of the day. And I think that there's just a natural tendency to kind of for writers to kind of build their own beliefs, their own core system and all of that. And me being somebody who, I'm not a hot take guy. I don't really make hot takes ever. I don't do any of the clickbait stuff. To me, I just care about saying what I feel is, on my head or my heart. I would just want to be right on whatever situation. I don't care if it's if it's the most common take or it's the most uncommon take. I just want to be right on whatever situation and say what I think and I believe. So that's, I think another reason why is I'm not somebody who's really set in stone on certain NBA things. Whereas, NBA, like there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, I'm dying on the hill of this player or this team or this way of playing basketball. And so I don't know. I think it's just sports culture just has like a stronger foundation for determining a right and wrong than hip hop. Because when you and I could talk hip hop all day, and you could say somebody's better than somebody, and I could disagree, and we could have a conversation, and at the end of the day, we can say agree to disagree and move on. Whereas sports, it's kind of like with First Take and all that, it's just you go and you go and you go till one side gives in.
Right. Oh, no, I absolutely get it. And that's an interesting point you bring up. I think music in general is more subjective than sports. I mean, it just is. I mean, with sports, if I say, LeBron's better than Kobe, I could use whatever stat to support my argument. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, you can plant your flag or you can die on one hill, which way or the other. As far as hip hop, like when you're debating, I think Jay-Z's better than Nas, like what statistic are you realistically going to use? I mean, album sales, I mean, that doesn't tell you the full story. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't, like there's no real statistical data that you can analyze that says, well, this rapper's better than that rapper. And that goes for every music form. It's like, I think Led Zeppelin's better than, the Beatles. Like, okay.
Right.
It's your opinion. You know what I mean? Like what do you use to constitute that? You know what I'm saying? As far as, with sports, it's a little bit different. Like, if I think Tom Brady's better than Peyton Manning, well, look at Tom Brady in the playoffs and look at the look at his stats and, look at how many yards he took. Like it's different in sports than it is in music. So I definitely get that. I that's an interesting point you bring up there. And I could definitely see that being an issue. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. So I guess this question kind of answers itself, but so you would say the hip hop one is the easiest one to do on a week to week basis. You know what I mean? That's just kind of turn the mic on and just talk about whatever topic you want to talk about, or is the NBA one a little bit easier because you do kind of have content that kind of feeds itself, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one that I would say is easier than the other, because especially when it comes to hip hop, because again, me acknowledging that I think that there's just a wider horizon of options to choose from when it comes to content and conversations in hip hop, I really do challenge myself to not, like I haven't done a podcast on Tekashi's trial. Like, I haven't, like I'm trying to find, I'm always challenging myself to not talk about, the just the headline thing. Like, let's find something interesting instead of doing that. I had Spike Lee on Deck TV, and we talked about, instead of Tekashi, we talked about how, album rollouts have changed, so I try to challenge myself in that sense, because there is more options, but at the same time, again, there is more options to talk in hip hop for sure. So it kind of balances out, whereas the NBA, like you said, is a very free flowing, you check the standings, you're watching games throughout the week and you're seeing something or an injury happens. The NBA will always give you things to talk about. And it's more current events
driven. It's more current events driven. It's like, is Ja Morant the rookie of the year? And then you can have a podcast episode about that. You know what I mean? Or, what team's going to make it out of the West? It's more kind of structured content. It's more kind of current events driven, as opposed to hip hop, which hip hop can be as well. Current event driven, but it's a little bit more of a free flowing, kind of a little bit of an open space, open conversation where you can kind of talk about a lot of different things, as opposed to kind of, just your run of the mill daily headlines type of thing. Yeah, exactly. No, I absolutely get it. Exactly. Yeah, no, I definitely get it. Yeah. So with your hip hop discussions, like, is there is there something that you're trying to accomplish with each kind of discussion that you have? Are you trying to learn something yourself? Are you trying to necessarily change an opinion about something? Like, what are you trying to accomplish when you say, you know, let's say you have a local producer on and you interview that person, whoever that person may be, you know, I guess what is the goal of the podcast each week for yourself and for your audience?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head with my goal is always the first thing you said, to learn, because I know that there's just so much in hip hop to learn. So when I sit down with a producer, I've never made a beat in my life. You know, we all went through that phase where we wanted to be a rapper. Like everyone who loves rap went through a phase where they wanted to be a rapper. I never released anything. I never even recorded anything, but you know, like I have that fascination in me. So I like to, you know, kind of talk to them about production and, you know, how things are arranged and all sorts of things that I wouldn't really know if I didn't have that conversation, you know. So it's really just for me to learn as much as possible. And through that, the listener, I try to ask the questions that not only I want to know, but what the listener wants to know, because mine's a lot more, I would say, informative than entertaining, you know. Like I think that's kind of the lane that I go for. And I don't, you know, I try to give it entertainment. I try to, you know, not make it just strictly informational, and I like to have fun. But at the end of the day, I do want to learn, and I do want to, you know, make my platform a place that people who love hip hop can go to and kind of learn something that they didn't know, you know. So that's really kind of the goal when I'm doing a podcast.
Who are some of the people that were inspiring to you in the podcast game? You know, some of the people that you kind of looked at and still look at for inspiration, or like, oh, that's something cool. I can try that on my end, or you could take a little bit of something from and kind of use as your own.
There are a lot. Like I keep a list. I always say this to everybody, that I have a list of millions of idols. Like I look at everybody and I can idolize or respect them for the smallest facet of their life. You know, I draw inspiration from everything from my favorite artists, you know, like Kendrick and Tupac and all that, to, you know, to basketball players, to writers, to broadcasters, to all that. But some of the big early inspirations for me were, for basketball and sports, it was Colin Cowherd and Zach Lowe, because Colin Cowherd was just his ability to talk by himself essentially for 3 hours and come up with these off the wall opinions, like the creativity of what he does, whether he's right or wrong. I understand. I really appreciate that level of creativity and content making. Zach Lowe, I love Zach Lowe to this day. Like I love listening to him, because every time I listen to him, I feel like I'm learning more about basketball just because of how smart he is and how attentive to detail he is. That was one of the first podcasts that I really, really listened to. And then in hip hop, you know, it was Sway, it was, you know, the Breakfast Club, it was Peter Rosenberg. Peter Rosenberg was a big one too for me, because I look at Peter Rosenberg and I see, you know, I can count on less than one hand the number of artists that have said something bad about him. And to me, that's like the most respectable and admirable trait to have, is that, you know, however far I go in the podcast world, I want to be able to be like Peter Rosenberg in the fact that almost nobody says anything bad about me, you know. So that's a very admirable trait. The Joe Budden podcast is one that I didn't start listening to till like a year ago, but that's one that I really love and I really draw a lot of inspiration from as well. So there's a lot of great content makers out there, and I try to just learn from all of them, you know, and then kind of use what I'm learning from them and apply it to what I think, and try to just, you know, take conversations to different levels and have unique conversations, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I get it. I get it. So what are some of your early inspirations as far as basketball? I mean, what got you into basketball? Where did you grow up? What team did you root for that developed your love for basketball?
Okay, so basketball is very interesting to me because the first game I ever saw. So I grew up and I still live there, about 20 minutes outside of Detroit. So I'll never be the guy that everybody in Michigan says they're from Detroit. I don't like to be that guy, but I do live very close to Detroit. So I have spent a lot of my childhood and a lot of my upbringing in Detroit, just because my brother went to Wayne State in Detroit, and my best friend also went to Wayne State in Detroit. And so I've always had the experience of Detroit since I can ever remember. But I technically did not grow up in Detroit. So obviously Detroit Pistons were my team. The first basketball game I ever saw was the one in the 2004 playoffs. I don't know if you'll remember this, but in the 2004 playoffs, the year the Pistons won the title, it was the conference or semifinals against the Nets when Chauncey Billups hit the half court shot, and that game ended up going to triple overtime. And
yes, I do remember that game, actually. Yes, I do remember that game.
Yeah, very iconic game. So I watched that game, and then I watched bits and pieces of the Detroit-Indiana series, and then by the Lakers series, I was watching every game. And I remember when the Pistons won, and then that summer my dad bought a basketball hoop, and I played basketball every day of my life, pretty much ever since then. And Detroit's always been my team. And then I just started reaching out and kind of following other teams and watching the prime time games. And next thing you know, by 2005 even, I want to say the next season, I was already watching just everything in the league. It wasn't just like I watched the Pistons for several years. No, by the age of like 8, I was watching everything in the league. I was watching the ESPN games, the TNT games. It didn't matter if the Pistons were playing or what. I just loved basketball, so I was watching everything I could.
Awesome, man, definitely. Yeah. And how was it? I know you technically grew up outside of Detroit, and don't apologize for that. I mean, that happens everywhere. I'm sure there's people. I mean, I'm from New York, and people who grew up in Long Island. I'm from New York. I'm from NYC, or I'm from so it happens everywhere. It happens absolutely everywhere. So it's not just in your case, Detroit. But growing outside of Detroit, how was that environment growing up in Detroit? Or actually being around the city of Detroit. Such an area so rich in music history. Obviously, I know I had Beezy on the show a couple weeks ago. As a matter of fact, the last episode I posted was Beezy. Shout out to Beezy, by the way, and all of everybody at that. Talk about growing up in Motown, obviously the history of Motown, everything like that. I know you're probably a little bit too young to appreciate that aspect of it per se, but just talk about growing up, outside of Detroit, and just being a fan of all things Detroit and basketball, specifically coming out of that area.
Yeah. I just really I love Detroit, and I loved it before I even got in the history. I always knew of the Motown history and all of that through my dad is a big music person. That's where I get a lot of my music inspiration and just the love of music in general from. My dad is he loves jazz. He'll listen to smooth jazz, classical jazz, just forever, any day of the week. Every day he has off of work, he is in the basement on his record player, blasting it throughout the whole house. Like that's my dad's love of music. So that's where I get it from. So, that was the whole music thing in Detroit is something that through my dad that I kind of got to experience as I got older. But as far as early memories, I didn't go to many football games. I've never been to a Lions game actually. And I've been to 2 Tigers games, and one of them I fell asleep. Like, I'm just not a baseball person.
That breaks my heart, by the way. I'm big on baseball, so it breaks my heart.
I know, and I hate to do it to you, man, but it was 28 degrees and I fell asleep.
Well, I can understand. I get it.
It's a different pace is all. Like I'm used to. Keep in mind, that was when I was like 19. So that was after, over a decade of watching fast-paced basketball all the time. So to go to something like baseball was just like it just wasn't my cup of tea. But so I obviously, when the Pistons moved downtown, I went down for their home opener. I've gone to dozens of games actually since they've even moved to Detroit in recent years. I went to Fox.
How is that new arena, by the way? How is that new arena, by the way?
I like it. I think it's a really good arena. I know it's getting flack because it's not exactly full, but that's because the city of Detroit, in my experience, they will ride for their team, but you got to give them something to ride for, and they're starting to, like, the attendance has picked up in the last year. And that's because of Blake Griffin and because of just what he brings, like the level of passion. We haven't had that since, the going to work era. We haven't had a superstar since 2004 that really cared about winning. And, Blake Griffin has been that, and that's kind of revitalized Detroit. And so, hopefully the Pistons could get better. And as long as they continue to get better, more people will show up. But yeah, it's a nice arena. It's very up to date. It's all organized. It's all organized very well. The red seating, I think, is cool, but the problem is if there's nobody there, then it looks bad on TV because it stands out. It's like the seats are bright red, so you could see when nobody's there. But
yeah, no, I get it.
It's a cool arena, man. It's a cool arena, and especially if you like Little Caesars, because obviously that's all they're selling there is like pizza and pop.
Oh, really? Wow.
Or pizza, pop, and beer. Yeah. So
nice. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, no, I'm a nerd for like arenas and stadiums and stuff like that. So I always every time I get a guest on in a city, I always ask about the arenas and whatnot.
You know what I'll say?
That's always interesting.
You know what I'll say is that it's honestly, because I went there for the Pistons, and I forgot to mention this. I also went there for Jay-Z for his tour.
Okay.
And for concerts, that thing is unbelievable. I think it's a good arena for basketball, but for concerts, it is unbelievable. Like, I saw Kendrick came on the Damn tour. He came actually 2 months before Little Caesars opened. He came in July and it opened in September. So
okay.
He just missed performing in Little Caesars Arena. So that was at the Palace. And when I saw Jay-Z, obviously Kendrick and Jay-Z are two different performers. Kendrick has a lot more like energy and intensity and like, right, visual components, whereas Jay-Z is more so it's the swagger, it's the bravado, it's the, it's a different type of performance. But that arena, when Jay-Z was performing, like the things they can do with the lights, the things, the way they can move the screens and all that, like it is state of the art, dude. Like that is, I know you're not in the Detroit area, but I mean, a concert at Little Caesars Arena is fantastic. It's a great venue for that too, which surprised me. I thought it would only be good for, basketball, since that was considered what it was built for, is basketball and hockey. But it's really
well. I mean, it's not to get into the weeds too much, but different arenas have that different aesthetic. Like, people underestimate that when you're talking about arenas. I mean, some arenas are better for basketball than they are for hockey. Some arenas are built for hockey better than they are for basketball. And it's like, so like not one size fits all. You know what I mean? In some arenas, like I've been to arenas where I've had terrible concert experiences, and I've been to arenas where I've had great concert experiences. So it's very different. It's, I think people kind of don't think about that. I think they kind of, it's an arena and it's built for events. So like, it just everything is supposed to be great. Like, no, I think there's little settings and there's little aesthetics that go into making these events and how these events come off or whatever. So yeah, no, that's good to hear, man. So it replaced Joe Louis Arena, right? So Joe Louis is torn down now?
Well, it didn't like exactly get built on the same land. Joe Louis actually hasn't been. I believe it was torn down, like, I want to say 2 months ago, because really? Okay. I remember going on a tour on the Detroit River. My Canadian relatives were in town, to make a long story short, and my parents decided, hey, let's take them on a Detroit River boat tour. And, you know, it's like a $20 ticket thing where you just ride around the Detroit River and you could see all of the like iconic stuff that's like on that riverfront in Detroit. And the Joe Louis Arena, that was in August, and the Joe Louis Arena was still up and it was set to be demolished soon. So I think it was demolished, like, I want to say less than a month after that. So probably sometime in September, I would say it got demolished.
Interesting. And I know I'm getting a little too nerdy on the arena stuff. What was the issue with the Palace? I always heard that arena got a lot of flack for just not being a great arena and just kind of not having the energy that other kind of, I know it probably wasn't the modern arena that like some of the newer ones are with the box seats and all that. But, you know, just kind of a quick synopsis of the Palace in Auburn Hills. I know it was away from the Detroit downtown area, which is not always appealing when you're trying to have events and stuff like that. Like what was the biggest issue with that arena from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's really what it was, truthfully, is like, even as a kid, I understood that going to Detroit and then going to the Palace of Auburn Hills, I understood the different experiences, the different cultures that exist. Like like Auburn Hills is a different culture than in Detroit. Right. And so it always kind of, you felt that seep through the arena, really. Like the arena itself, it wasn't, in my opinion, a bad arena by any stretch. Like you said, it didn't have like the most modern seats, but the seats weren't like, I sat, trust me, you know, as a broke college kid, I sat in the nosebleeds. Like those seats were not uncomfy by any means. Like they were just, you know, they were movie theater seats before movie theater seats became what they are today, pretty much. Okay. Right. You know, if you catch my drift. So it wasn't like, and it wasn't a super, it wasn't a super tough arena to navigate either. It was very straightforward. It was a good deal of walking. The biggest part, and probably the most brutal part now that I think about it, was because we're in the Midwest and the winters are brutal. The parking lot was outside and it was massive. And it was just such a problem to get in and out like of the arena. And it was such a problem, like after the games, when you got in the car, I mean, you took about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to walk to your car because you're walking like close to a mile to get to your car. Oh, you know, wow. Unless you're one of the first people there. So then once you get to your car, you know, then you're in there another 25, 30 minutes before you're on just to get out. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. I get it. So yeah, those were probably the biggest complaints about it. But I mean, it wasn't the worst arena. It was just, you know, again, the environment was a little off because it wasn't the area it was in. It's fine if you're not in the city, you know, but to be in a city that's so vastly different culture-wise than Detroit, I think was really what created a disconnect. And then, like I said, the parking lot and just kind of stuff like that, little things, but it all added up.
Yeah, no, I get it. I absolutely get it. And that's more of a suburban area, right? Auburn Hills.
Oh yeah, very much so. Okay. Very much so.
Okay. Now, I always get interested in these kind of things. I like having people. I've never been to Detroit. It's one of those cities that I want to visit because it's so steeped in history. It's obviously. Really cool. No, I do. I plan on making my way to Detroit one of these days. No, it's definitely really. Obviously it's a city that has so much history in it, and I always like having different people on from different cities, and they can kind of give us a little bit of insight on the city and the culture and whatnot. So that's always a cool thing, man. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Let's shift gears a little bit. Now that we learned a little bit about you and your history and all that, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Obviously the big story of the week or the last couple of weeks, obviously with hip hop, I'll spare you on going right into the Nick Cannon Eminem beef right away. Juice WRLD, the young rapper passing away tragically. It's been a week now. Passed away. So many different details and so many different there's not. I do have to say there has not been an official toxicology report. There's been a lot of hearsay, a lot of like witness and stuff, but there hasn't been an official toxicology. So, just out of respect, we won't speculate on what happened or didn't happen. We do know that, or from what's been reported, he swallowed a bunch of Percocets right before he passed away, and that a lot of people kind of making the correlation that seemed to trigger the seizures that ultimately led to his passing. So, obviously, it's a death that I wouldn't say it rocked the hip hop world because, he was still a young rapper, wasn't as established as say like a Nipsey Hussle or anything like that. But it definitely was an eye opening death because he is someone that did have a major 2018, obviously with the Lucid Dream song that was big. I never cared for it. I'll be honest. I never cared for Juice WRLD per se, the rapper, but it's always tragic when you lose, a kid. What, he was 21 years old, 21, 22 years old, something like that. Yeah, and that's so. I mean, anybody, successful or not, losing their life at 21 years old in such a terrible way like that is always sad, and just it just makes you think about a lot of different things. But so a lot of the conversation has been about kind of hip hop in 2019 and the culture of just drug use within hip hop. I have a lot of different thoughts on it. And that's why I kind of wanted to bring you on the show this week because you're younger than I am. Obviously, you're a little bit more around the age range of Juice WRLD and these folks. So just to get your perspective on the culture, because there's a lot of people that are talking about hip hop and what it is today as far as culturally. And we know it's the biggest music form. It's the biggest music genre out right now. I mean, it surpassed pop music, it surpassed rock, which is crazy. Somebody my age or older to think about hip hop being the dominant music form in music. You know what I mean? So, but there is a lot of conversation going on right now about kind of drug use in hip hop, and has it been kind of accepted or? Obviously you hear a lot of the things about druggy rap. Obviously, Joyner Lucas had this tweet basically blaming the industry and hip hop fans for kind of the acceptance of this drug culture. And I've had a lot of debates with a lot of people that I respect, and I respect their hip hop acumen and opinions. And you get a lot of varying different opinions, man. I mean, a lot of people kind of understand. I'm with Joyner Lucas to a point on what he was trying to say. Some people strictly disagree. I know I got into it with Ken and the guys. They kind of disagree. What do you think, man? I mean, is the Juice WRLD death kind of a microcosm of where hip hop is in 2019 right now?
I think the unfortunate truth is yes. I think that obviously hip hop isn't by any means innocent of the drug culture and everything that's happening, but I think they are far from the only or even most important culprit in it. I think drugs and violence and all that, I think that's a reflection of society. I don't think it's just a hip hop thing. Now, you can say that hip hop talks about it and that feeds, they feed each other, no doubt. But T.I. always said, one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard was that, he said, if you want these artists to change their content, you have to change their environment, because they're rapping about what they know. They're rapping about their perspective. And, I think that's a totally true statement, that a lot of these artists are talking about just what they know, and what they know is what they're around and what they're introduced to and what they become familiar and comfortable with. So I think in order to change, I guess, the content, you have to also try to change the world. But the other thing that T.I. didn't say that I think has to be added to is that hip hop also has to be on the same page in that front. It's like we can't move past this drug culture that we're in right now unless both hip hop and society, and of course the pharmaceutical companies, all that, everyone has to get on the same page. There's multiple accounts. You can't it can't be a war. You know, it's got to be a unified movement for it to really be effective and stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's such a nuanced issue. Like, it's not just, it's just one thing. I think it's a lot of different things. I guess the point that I come from with it is being a little bit older, is that I feel like I definitely feel this decade, there's been a shift in hip hop where I think, like, growing up, like, obviously there was always subjective themes in hip hop that were different. Yeah. I mean, there was always, rappers always talked about, selling drugs, murder, I'm the biggest gangster, I'm gonna kill you, this, that, and the other. But you never felt like, I mean, you kind of felt like they were living that life, but you never felt like they were glorifying it per se. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least for me, like, for instance, like mafioso rap, like when Biggie was Frank White, like I never wanted to go out and be Frank White. Like, I never wanted to go out and be this drug kingpin. I think Biggie used that persona to basically tell a story. I think the difference now in hip hop, and I would say it's definitely taken on a life of its own over the last 5 years, really this decade, has been that it's become more drug user rap, where it's like, it's about popping mollies. I mean, you got songs about like, you didn't see that back in the day. Like, you didn't see, songs about Molly. I mean, it was in songs. I mean, drug use was in songs, I guess. So I'm not trying to sit there and say that hip hop is completely innocent and that it's never been drug users in hip hop. But I think the glorification of it is what's been changed. And I think that has a lot to do with the kind of this younger generation of hip hop, where it's not about telling stories of drug kingpins and drug stories per se. It's about kind of, I think this whole rock star lifestyle has taken a life of its own, where, hey, I'm a rock star, I'm going to get high and, drink lean and all this other stuff. I think that's come to the mainstream a little bit, because I know some people have challenged me when I've said that. And I said, oh, well, 3 6 Mafia Sipping on Some Scissors, it's a 20-year-old song. Yes. But it wasn't as like, you didn't hear every song with Sipping on Scissor. Like, that's the first time I even learned about lean was on that song. Like, so, but it wasn't a mainstream thing. Whereas now, like, you got these rappers that have, Little Mozzie, Little Xans, the Smoke Perps, and, like, every song is a lean reference or a drug reference. Like, I think it's just different. I think I really do think it has changed. And I think that's the conversation I think Jordan Lucas was trying to have. I would agree that I think he probably could have used better framing and better wording of it, I guess. But I think that's the conversation that I think the culture has to have, is like how prevalent this drug use is amongst younger rappers and younger fans.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that everything you're saying is true, that it's definitely over the years become more of a glorification than it ever was before. Before it was a part, and like you said, there were different aspects of it, with dealing instead of consuming and things of that nature. But it's always been around to an extent, especially in the South sound. But it's now at a point where it is. The Papa Molly I'm sweating is like the lyric that everybody's quoting, and that whatever year that came out, I think that was like 2011 or something. That was a minute ago. But, you're right. Like, this decade, it definitely shifted into, like, these artists really almost saying, look how far I'm testing my boundaries with my drug consumption. And, and unfortunately, having the repercussions that you would kind of expect. So hip hop has to take accountability. I think hip hop is also, just in general, I think hip hop is starting to move past it, because I think you're looking at the totality of this decade, now that we're at the end of the decade, we can look back at this decade and we can say, really, I mean, outside of Future and maybe one or two other people I'm blanking right now, most of the drug consuming artists haven't had staying power. And if you want to have, like, the people that have had staying power are the people that are making either just really thought provoking music, or just really, really great artistic music, and they're evolving and changing. And a lot of these artists, the Lil Xans or the whoever's, you know, they're making music, but they're not really, they're staying in one lane. And hip hop, I think it's showing that hip hop is shifting past it. It might not be at the rate we want it to or need it to be, because obviously, you know, the amount of deaths have been alarming, especially within the last 2 years when it comes to overdoses and just drug consumption. But I think that is a sign that hip hop is always kind of moving in the direction that is away from it. Like, it is, like, I hate to make it sounds so negative if I say it's just a wave or a fad, the whole drug consumption, because then it can be taken as disrespect to the people who have passed from it. Or
I get it. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
And I don't mean to do that, but I think that hip hop is shown that it kind of is a wave or a fad, that really the longevity is in true artistry and, you know, evolving and tackling bigger and broader concepts than staying in that one sound. You know, I'm hearing and a lot less. We're not hearing, you know, a lot of Papa Molly, I'm Sweating songs anymore. Like, we're hearing less than we did probably, like, I want to say like 2, 3, 4 years ago. You know, so I think hip hop is starting to move past it, but I don't think it's by any means done with it right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I've always said this, and I believe this: music is a time capsule of the time that it's released. You know, I think 100%. You have to, absolutely. So, you know what I mean? Like, so we are living in a societal issue right now in this country where the opioid crisis is a big thing. You know, and I think that I think that, you know, it's a big thing. It's definitely a big thing. And I think that's what adds to this as well, is that, you know, this is not just a thing that's affecting hip hop. Obviously, other artists have struggled with these things and other music genres. And I think it's a capsule of what's going on in society. And I think that I never want to say that musicians or athletes have a responsibility. I don't believe that. I'm not one of those that, like, you have a responsibility to be a role model. Like, you like, athletes don't choose to be role models. You know, musicians don't choose to be role models. I get that. But you end up being a role model. It's like,
yeah, you end up being, you're put in that place.
You're put in that place. And yes, you don't choose to be. Yeah, but you are. And I think you do have a responsibility of sorts to, you know, not glorify that. You know what I mean? Not glorify drug use in that way. Not glorify. And again, I'm not trying to sound like a prude. I listen to crazy shit. You know, I'm not trying to be hypocritical, because I'm the same one bumping Future. I'm the same one bumping, you know, 21 Savage. I sipping on some scissor was my shit. So I'm not trying to sit here and try to, like, be all prudish. And back in my day, we didn't, like, I'm not coming from that. What I'm saying is that I think there is a conversation to be had about this. I really do. But it is had. I hope that it is discussed. And I think, I guess the frustrating thing for me is that a lot of times in the culture, I think we don't want to have those conversations because we want to just look at them as just one-offs, or, oh, it's not emblematic of the culture itself. But I think it is. Yeah. I think it is. I mean, I think one death in the culture is enough to have a conversation about it. And now you've had pretty kind of some high-profile deaths because of drug use, that I think that there is a situation where I think you do need to have a conversation about it. And you do need to, like, I remember watching a Vlad interview not too long. I don't know if it was a recent Little Bootsy interview, but it was Bootsy on a Vlad TV interview. And he basically talked about, like, he had to stop doing lean because, like, it was just like he found himself where he was just gone. Like, he was just mentally gone. Like he would drink some lean and it just basically put him in a zone where he was just, like, comatose. Like, he was a vegetable, like, to the point where he would just get really sick. So like I feel like that in itself, having interviews like that, is having a conversation. And, like, that artist Bootsy himself having that conversation and that self-reflection of, like, yo, I need to get off this shit. So I feel like that is the type of stuff that we need to be hearing more in the mainstream and telling these kids, because it's not guys my age, and it's not even kids I don't want to say kids regarding to you, but, like, it's not even guys your age. I think it's the young kids. It's the 15, the 16, the 17-year-olds that are young, that are impressionable, that are listening to this shit. And they're thinking, oh, again, to use the quote, Papa Molly, I'm sweating. Like, they're thinking this shit is cool and it's fun. And I know what people will say. It's like, oh, well, when we were back in the day, when I was growing up and I listened to, Scarface, I didn't want to murder anybody. I think it's different talking about murder and this kind of gangster lifestyle than drug use. Drug use is more personable to people. Like anybody can go and get a prescription to Percocets and take Percocets, and they're high, they're popping pills and they're sweating. Like, it's different than like you becoming a drug kingpin. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more relatable, I guess, to put it in better words. But like, so I don't,
accessible, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's not a fair comparison when I hear people say like, oh, well, I listened to, Eminem and I never wanted to kill my mom. Yeah, I get it. But I don't think it's a fair comparison, because I don't think the situations are the same. Yeah. So no, but I do think that there definitely needs to be a conversation. And so do you think there will be a conversation that is to be had with the culture, with this Juice WRLD death? Like, do you think, I know you said that it's starting to change, but do you really think like it'll really start to change to the point where I think there's going to be some conversations being had about this?
I think it is progressing towards that, and I think people are having conversations, and I think really, to be honest with you, I think really, the Lil Peep it really, really picked it up. And then the Mac Miller thing, I think, took it to another level, because he was like a generational talent. Like, he was a very, very high level artist. And I hate to, speak on the dead in that manner, but sometimes it takes like it took with Pac and Biggie, it took murders of that level for them to be like, for hip hop to be like, whoa, we need to stop, we need to chill. Unfortunately, like, Big L is another all-time great, but his murder didn't really, I guess, I don't know, I can't really speak on it, but I feel like in comparison to the,
it didn't move the needle. It didn't move the needle like a Biggie and a Tupac would have. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, I think that the conversation is starting to be had. It's starting to be had more, and I think there is an awareness of, I don't know Uzi personally, but I know that he's mentioned several times that he is dropping. He's been dropping all of his drug consumption, or most of his drug consumption, since Lil Peep's passing and Mac Miller's passing. So I think that there is an awareness and there is a shift. I just don't know if it's at the level where it's going to totally stop it yet. Right. Unfortunately. No, but I think
I agree with you.
Yeah, I think they're moving towards it, though. I guess I think it's building towards that, and I hope it doesn't take another passing for it to happen. I hope that it just keeps continually building, and we don't have to have any more passings for it to happen. But it might be another passing might really break it, because it does seem like it's very, very upfront and an aware issue in hip hop now. I will say that.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes change is incremental. Unfortunately, it's not the whole scale change that sometimes we want. Sometimes, and that's right. In a lot of things. But I'm with you. I totally agree. I don't think it's going to progress as fast as I think maybe you or I would want it to. And I'm a little bit less optimistic than you are in a way, because I think it is going to take another death. I think it is going to. I hate to say this, and I'm not wishing that on anybody, but I do think it's going to take a prevalent death. I really do. I think it's going to take somebody of some stature to be like, yo, okay, we need to slow down on what the fuck is going on. I mean, like Mac Miller was the beginning, but I do think it's going to take. Like, I think if a Future passed away, again, I'm not hoping or calling for that, but like if a Future, or somebody of that stature, like a superstar, passed away, I'm not saying Kendrick. I'm not saying
Wayne,
Yeah, like a Lil Wayne, exactly. That's a perfect example. Like a Lil Wayne, and even Wayne has talked about stopping a lot of his consumption of lean and the drug use, because, you know,
absolutely,
he's seen what that's done to him. But I mean, like, if a Lil Wayne passed away, like, I think that's what would trigger a lot of this conversation. And I hate to say that that's what it's going to take, but, you know, like you said, sometimes it does take that. It takes tragedy to really spur a national, and in this case, a cultural discussion about what's going on in hip hop right now. Because I think because even when Joyner Lucas put that out there, I think a lot of people met him with some flack for that. I mean, people that I know, love, and respect, that I respect their rap opinions. They were like, "Oh no, he's you know, he's off base with that and da 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 da." And I'm like, is he really though? Like, is he really? And how much respect? And I think he was coming at it from the perspective of fans and music industry, like execs, like how much culpability do they bear in this? And, you know, a lot of people say like, oh, well, they're adults. You know, Juice WRLD's an adult. He made a decision. And I get that. I'm not trying to take that aspect away from it. Like, Juice WRLD, this young man made a decision. Yeah. Nobody put a gun to his head. Nobody made him do something that he didn't want to. He made a decision. But I do think that the culture, and I do think that these record companies, they know what they're doing. They want to get the next. They know that drug use is up in hip hop, or drug amongst young hip hop fans. So they try to find the smoke perps and the young Percocets and the young. You know, I'm being facetious a little bit, but they go for this. Like, they know what's going on. They're not that dumb. You know what I mean? They're not that willfully ignorant.
There has even been stories when it comes to you know, music labels and executives, you know, saying, you know, here, what do you need? You know, like they like, what we can supply, whatever it is you need, like, you know, to kind of like, there's been stories I've heard and I don't ever want to go on record because I don't believe them. I don't believe them to be true. I don't have enough to be comfortable with saying it publicly, like the names and stuff. But I've heard stories about artists that, you know, the labels have come to them and said, you know, hey, like, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like, we can get this for you, this, and that. Like, so because at the end of the day, the drug consumption world is such a big world. And unfortunately, these executives, that's another way of controlling. If they can supply them with some type of tool to destroy themselves in a way, that the labels will do it. That's the ugly truth of the industry. That's the totally 100% ugly truth. But to offer a brighter side on this conversation, one thing I do think that Juice WRLD really does help in this conversation is a lot of people really did look at Juice WRLD as an up and coming artist, as a guy with true limitless potential. Mm-hmm. You know, I thought he was a very talented artist. I wasn't the biggest fan of him, but I thought that his versatility was really underappreciated. Like, he had songs on his album where he was rapping, he had songs where he was singing. So he showed an ability to do more than what I think people in his lane or his peers that he's compared to can do. And sometimes it takes something that powerful, a kid who was on top of the world, you know, had charting success and, you know, was so young and had just a future. I remember when his album came out, there was a couple rappers, I don't remember who they were, but they said, you know, this guy's ceiling is Drake. You know, whether you agree or not, but that was the way he was looked around. So I'm hoping that somebody that's that young, with that amount of potential, with that amount of, life left, for that to be cut short, hopefully that can really be the quote unquote, the tragedy that really pushes it over the edge and gets us towards a place where we can like really talk about it and, you know, stop it from happening, prevent it from happening in the future.
Your lips to God's ears, man. Definitely. I definitely want to see that happen, man. Again, I wasn't a fan of the guy, but it's always tragic when you see somebody lose their life
absolutely
at 21 years old. And it's just not, that's not something that I don't think we all of us, regardless if you're a fan of his or not, want to see. So, that's it's unfortunate, man. It really is. And I really do hope that this spurs a conversation. I really do. And we address this as it should, because I think it is something that needs to be discussed and it's worth noting. So, yeah, man, I hope so. So to switch gears a little bit more a lighter note, I guess, not to continue the dourness of the conversation, but Eminem and Nick Cannon, a beef that just won't go away.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like I feel like it's been going on forever, and it still won't go away, I guess. Where are you with the whole? And I'll get to a little bit. I'll get to more of Eminem in a second, but kind of where are you with this whole beef? This beef so far with Eminem. I guess this beef that nobody asked for in 2019.
Yeah, I think it's just so it's so just like unnecessary. Like it kind of looks bad on all parties. Like it really does. I don't think anybody comes out looking great out of this. However, me being the fan of rap beefs, like I will never turn down an Eminem diss track. Like, to me, I think it's still absolutely wild. I don't know. It's a quick sidebar. I think it's absolutely wild that anybody thinks that MGK won that beef against Eminem last year.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah, but
okay, okay, fair enough. So I'm never turning down an Eminem diss track. Just because I know Eminem's ability and to see a great like that. It's always entertaining to see them engaged in a battle. But I mean, when it's against a guy like Nick Cannon who raps but not really raps, you know what I mean? Like, he does his wild and out thing. He's done music before and all that stuff, but it's kind of Hollywood rap,
Yeah.
So it's not really hip hop. And I respect Nick Cannon, so don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, like, that's not somebody that you're waiting for an Eminem beef for. You're waiting for Eminem to beef with like Nas or somebody who's like really like a legend in the game, who had a great pen, this and that. Like, that's the kind of beef you're looking for. So I think Nick Cannon, playing it 20 times on his Wild and Out show, like in between commercials and all that, and him going on Twitter and saying he won and like all that stuff because Eminem won't respond, like, is stupid. Because I don't know if Eminem's responding or not, but I don't think it matters. I think that Eminem really it's not really a worthy opponent. Like, if he drops a diss track, cool. If he doesn't, I don't think it really matters, like, to this. I just think this is just kind of a relevant beef with two big names, but the beef itself is irrelevant.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think it serves anybody any purpose, really. Well, I guess for Nick Cannon, I think it does something for him, I guess. Yeah. It's a little. If I had to pick one side that it did a little bit more for, I guess it's Nick Cannon. I don't even agree with that, because I think he's getting slandered online for it. Like,
oh, he is.
Yeah, he's getting he's slandered online for it. So I wouldn't even say it helps him more, but yeah, I think it makes both parties look bad. And to me, honestly, like, I think it's just Eminem trolling. Like, I don't even think I think if you gave M truth serum, like, I don't think he really has a problem with Nick Cannon. I think it's just him being like, people forget M was the original troll. Like, he was the original 6ix9ine in the sense. Like, he would troll artists. Yeah. Like, I don't think Eminem has a real problem with Nick Cannon. I think it's just, like, Nick Cannon's easy to pick on. So, yeah, it's like he's easy to make fun of. So, yeah. I think that's what M was basically doing. I think M gets bored sometimes, so he finds a favorite target of his to just pick on. I don't even think Eminem really expected Nick Cannon to go back at him, and he did. And I do think that Eminem is in a no-win situation right now. Like, I think if he doesn't respond, there's going to be some idiots online. They're going to say, "See, Eminem's overrated, and Nick Cannon got him." And if he does respond and he kills Nick Cannon, oh well, it was just Nick Cannon. He should kill Nick Cannon. It's like, it's literally a no-win situation for him.
Yeah, like, if he drops a diss record, Eminem's going to say something in that controversial, because we all know Eminem, and they're going to either say, one, it was unnecessary, or two, Eminem's going to say something and Twitter is going to get in an uproar and try to cancel Eminem, like they did with Kamikaze Like, you know, it's just kind of like Eminem's in a lose-lose situation, kind of like he was with the MGK, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, you know. Now I think just because I only thing I disagree with is that I think MGK was a more respected rapper than Nick Cannon, so I think there was 100%. There was something to gain from that. But with Nick Cannon, I mean, there's literally nothing to gain from. Like, honestly, like as an Eminem fan, like I kind of don't even want. Like, part of me wants him to respond just because I think it'll be entertaining, and from an entertainment aspect, I want it. But honestly, like if he just doesn't even respond, like it's just like what are you gaining from it? Nothing. Everybody, like Nick Cannon threw a bunch of diss tracks at you and is getting slandered online for it. So you, in a way, you kind of won.
Yeah.
In a way, you've already won. So yeah, no. But I do want to talk about this though. I think this speaks on a bigger issue concerning Eminem, and I don't know where this is something that's been on my mind for the last couple years, and I haven't been able to have a conversation or discussion about it. At least on my platform anyway. About why Eminem. I feel like there's a trend going around now, and I've been seeing it over the last 5 or 6 years, where I think it's become cool to hate on Eminem and to slander Eminem.
Yeah,
and like I don't know why. Like, where did that shift start? Like, because I felt like people in my generation, like I think, respected Eminem, and I think I know people that never even cared for Eminem's music, but respected Eminem and respected his rap prowess and ability. And I feel like now, over the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like there's been like a concerted effort to overrate Eminem, or to try to like discount Eminem's legacy and ability, you know, and I just want to know, like, where did that happen? Like, where did that start, where it's become cool to hate Eminem? I mean, it's gotten to the point of just ridiculousness. Like you said, people will say that MGK got him last year in the beef, which is like I literally have to question your hip hop acumen if you think MGK won that battle. I mean, it just, at some point it just becomes like, take the bias out of there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, I don't like Drake. I don't like Drake at all. I don't like his music, but that's like me saying that Meek Mill beat Drake. Like stop. Like, that's just asinine at some point. Like, facts are facts at this point. Like, so like with Eminem, like, have you seen that? You think I'm wrong? Like, have you seen that shift with hip hop fans that have just kind of gone out of the way to make Eminem a punching bag? And why do you think that is?
No, 100%. I agree with you, and I'm so glad that we are having this conversation, because I've not had this specific conversation on my podcast. I've had it with a million of my hip hop friends who I talk hip hop with, but it drives me crazy because there's so many facets to it. Like, first off, let me start by saying that Eminem is not totally blameless in this 100%, because a lot of it is the fact that Eminem's standard or quality of music has dropped.
Absolutely.
And, you know, outside of Kamikaze, and I think there were great moments on Marshall Mathers LP too, but outside of those two albums, there has not been much great moments from Eminem in the last decade, in my opinion. So let me start by saying, you know, that music is always going to be the thing that makes people, you know, look the other way, and forgive for any transgressions or anything like that. Not that Eminem's committed anything, but, you know, Eminem being the reputation that he has he was very much so looked at as, it was weird. I think last generation, last decade in hip hop, he was looked at the dude who will say whatever he wants, you know, say whatever he feels he can do or say anything. Versus now, now I think it's like social media and like this generation has kind of rewrote that history as Eminem was a bully, you know, like, and so I think that because there's become a bully narrative around Eminem, that it's made people more eager to cancel him. And the fact that he's always had corny lines. That's one thing that every Eminem fan, myself included, can acknowledge, that he is, despite being one of the greatest, he's always had corny lines. And
he's always had corny lines, but it was always an aesthetic of like I always found it like a part of the package. It wasn't like
exactly.
Big Sean. Like when Big Sean has corny lines, it's like it takes away from Big Sean because his personality and his image is of like, I'm Big Sean, I'm like this suave debonair, like, you know what I mean? As far as like Eminem, like, hey, I'm just a white boy that is like sick as fuck on the mic, you know what I mean? Like, so this, I would say like corny lines were a part of the Eminem package that I think it could be a little bit forgiven. Not to cut you off.
100%. And Kanye's the same way. Like Kanye can say like, you know, the bleached ass line, like that's a line that like only Kanye can say. You could give that to 30 rappers and nobody's going to say it better than Kanye. You know, it's like there's certain things that we accept, but again, a new generation is not listening with the same ears. Every generation, music listeners evolve. You know, the new generation will never look at the previous generation in the same light. It will never happen. You know, so there's that. And then there's also, I think, a big thing, like a friend of mine, a real close friend of mine was having a debate years ago at our job. We were just talking one day about J versus M. This was like in 2016. And we were like, J versus M, you know, who's better? And I was like, Jay-Z, clearly, I mean, just look at how Jay-Z's music's evolved versus Eminem's. Like, Jay-Z, a lot of his music from his early days or from his prime days, you can still play now. Eminem's, you can play in certain settings or at certain moments or certain songs, not necessarily like outside of that 3-album run, the Slim Shady LP, the Eminem Show, Marshall Mathers LP, like that run. Outside of that, a lot of Eminem's music doesn't necessarily evolve well with today's time. Not only just in content wise, but also like production wise. Like I make a comparison. Bad Meets Evil and Watch the Throne came out in the same year. Which production or which one, just from a production side, sounds like it actually belongs in this decade and the other doesn't? That's really emblematic of the route Eminem chose to go versus the route that, you know, Kanye and Jay-Z went, and like music as a whole went. Music as a whole still sounds like elements of Watch the Throne versus nobody is sounding like that Bad Meets Evil album nowadays. Yeah. Even though I like that album. That's not to knock it, but it's just like, so I think it's a lot of factors like that really weigh into, you know, Eminem trying to be, you know, quote unquote canceled or whatever. And, you know, I think it's a really interesting, I think we're at a really interesting point, and I think it's going to keep progressing that way. Eminem's almost in a lose-lose situation to the point where, you know, he's going, no matter what he does, unless it's just undeniably excellent, you know, unless it's the level of 444 or better, like Eminem's going to get flack. Like Kamikaze, I think, was a really solid album, but it got some flack. It got praised the night it dropped. I remember that. I remember everybody going, man, this is crazy. And then the next morning, those same publications, not even 12 hours later, were posting, wait a minute, he said this about Tyler, the Creator. And actually, this album's really not that good. Like, so it's just like the quick shift was just like, really? Like, seriously? Like, yeah, exactly. So all I ask is that everyone be fair on their opinion for Eminem, because there's at this point, there's plenty to like about him and plenty to hate about him. Like, Eminem definitely sabotaged himself by dropping horrible albums like Revival. Like, that's just undeniably horrible. It has actually 2, I think, really fantastic songs on there that don't get enough credit. But unfortunately, that's what happens when you have 18-track album and only 2 of them are you know, quality. Are good. Yeah. So they kind of get lost in the sauce. But yeah. You bring up some really excellent points, and I agree with everything that you said. I do think, and look, full disclosure, I'm an Eminem fan. I've always been an Eminem fan. He's one of my favorite rappers. So I come at this from a little bit of a biased opinion. But I think the hate is just gotten to the point where it's just like, it's really ridiculous. Like you said, to the point where it's like, he's literally in a no-win situation. And I think even the people that hate Eminem would agree he's one of the greatest rappers of all time.
Now, some would argue he's top 10. Some would argue he's not top 10. But I think most people who you respect their hip hop opinion would agree that Eminem is definitely one of the 10, 15 greatest rappers of all time. Like, I think like at this point, you have to be an idiot to not agree with that.
Yeah,
that being said, though, for a rapper of his stature, like the level of hate and disrespect he gets, like I think it's I don't think I've ever seen this before. Like, I don't think you've ever seen a rapper of that stature get the hate and the just flat out disrespect that Eminem gets. Like, yo, like you said, there's nothing this man can do to win, because it's going to be like the people that really like Eminem are going to say that everything he does is great and everything. And then the people that absolutely hate Eminem are going to say that everything he does is shit. And it's like literally no win anywhere. Right. So
yeah, and it's just not cool to like Eminem. Like that's the state of the social media world, the time period we're in. It's just it's the undeniable truth that it's just not cool to be an Eminem fan right now. Like, people crack jokes about, oh, you know, I'll see memes all day that are like, oh, people that love rap only listen to Eminem, like, or whatever, like, you know, like kind of just like memes and whatever tweets, like just making fun of Eminem. Like, so it's just like, it's at a state and time for all of the reasons that we mentioned. Like, it's just kind of not cool to be an Eminem fan right now. But like, and as long as it's not cool, the fair weather fans are going to lean against him.
I guess the question that I have is like, how did we? I guess we've come up with different theories, like, but how did we get there? Like, how did we get to that point where it literally, like, being a fan of an Eminem is like being a fan of Nickelback? Like, how did we get there? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I agree with the theories that you have. I think Eminem was in a tricky situation because obviously he had that 3-run album, and I think Encore has actually grown on me over time. At the time, I was disappointed in Encore, but I think it's grown on me. It's not as good as his first 3. Like, nothing will ever touch the first 3. But I do think that Encore over time has gained in esteem for me. Like, I still would cut, you know, like 5 tracks off of Encore. Like, I think Encore was 5 tracks away from being a really great album. But like, it's grown in esteem for me. But like, I think Eminem, once he kind of got over his drug use and the stuff with his mom and all that stuff, like all of the personal issues and the demons that he was dealing with in his life, like, I think Eminem was in that zone where, like, how do I still be successful? Like, I can't be the same Slim Shady where I'm just ripping on celebrities and just saying the most outlandish shit in the world because society had moved forward. You know what I'm saying? For better or for worse. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he's in that zone where, and like, the thing that people don't have to understand too is like, yo, M is nearing 50. Like, he's not the same Eminem of 1999 where he's this 23-year-old punk kid who could say just the most wittiest, funniest shit ever. But it's like so fucked up that you're afraid to laugh at it. Like, he's not in that. He himself is not it. Like, his daughter's a grown ass woman now. Like, Haley, the little girl Haley, who we saw in the outro of Eminem show, Haley's song. Like, she's a grown ass woman now. Like, so he's in a different mind.
Fun fact: she went to college with me. She went to college.
Oh, word? Really?
Me.
Wow.
And she went to a high school that was near me. A high school that we used to always play every year in sports. And she's actually, her birthday is exactly 1 week after mine. I'm born a week before Christmas. She is born on Christmas.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. But I mean, you know, but think about that. But seriously, I see you. I totally hear you. No, but like, I feel like Eminem was in that zone where, like, how do I still be relevant without being able to be the old me? And I think he was still, and I think a lot of rappers kind of go through that. Like, I feel like Jay early in this decade kind of went through the same thing. Like a lot of people were down on Jay because his like Jay got to that point where he had accomplished so much and he was so rich that he just kept rapping about rich shit. And I think I think it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, where it's like, I like Jay, but I can't relate to Basquiat Jay. Like, I can't relate to that. Yeah. And I think Jay gained a lot of people back with 444, where there was for the first time, you actually saw some vulnerability in Jay. Like, you saw somebody that came at it from a different perspective. So I think he gained a lot of people back. And I think, I just think Eminem hasn't had his 444 yet. I think Eminem hasn't had his, like, more mature. I think Recovery was close, because I still love Recovery. I think it's a great album. It had its low points. I just like any Eminem album. I think there's about 3 tracks that I would do away in Recovery as well. Yep. But I think he hasn't had that 444 moment where it's like, wow, like M could still do this for a whole album. I think Kamikaze was close as well, but
yeah,
I think he was in that zone where he didn't know how to be Eminem and not be Slim Shady. You know what I mean? Like I think that was the zone that he was stuck in, and I think he had matured, and I think the culture and society had moved past kind of his shtick, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So I think he was just trying to figure out, like, okay, how can I just be that guy? So I think he just decided, like, yo, I'm just going to be, a rapper that can just out rap a lot of motherfuckers. And I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because like he literally gets made fun of for being a rapidy rapper. Like, oh, he just like my brother, who I love and I respect, is Eminem. He's just like, he's one of these rapidy rappers that raps really fast and rhymes a lot of words together, but he's boring. Like, what?
Like, that's a contradicting statement.
Exactly. So now it's become boring to be a fully competent rapper. Like I just don't understand that. Like, oh, it's boring. Like J. Cole, he's boring. Why? Because he's a good rapper? Like, I don't. Yeah. I don't like. I just don't understand that. Like, I don't like Rick Ross, but I don't say Rick Ross is boring. Like, I think he's a good rapper, but I don't care for Rick Ross. But I don't say like, oh, Rick Ross is boring. I don't like Rick Ross. He rhymed Coke with Coke and Wingstop. And I think it's boring. Like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how did we get there? I have a theory, and it's going to be a little bit controversial. I think a lot of this is race motivated too.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. I mean, it's not exactly cool to be white now.
I really believe it's race. I'm not saying that every person that doesn't like Eminem is racist. I'm not saying that. I'm right. Let me clarify that. I'm not saying that. Yeah. But I do think there is an element of race to this. And I feel like I've had conversations with people that just do not accept Eminem because he's white. Do not accept that Eminem is a great rapper, or that cannot stomach that a great rapper, a rapper of Eminem's caliber is that great because, and that he's white. Like, they just cannot accept it. Right. Now, I've literally had this conversation with people, and I'm like, what? Like, it blows my mind. Blows my mind. And I'm just like, really? Like, but I think a lot of this is race motivated. Because I like to look at it like Kanye. Like, there's still fans that give Kanye a pass for all of the shit that he does. Yet Eminem gets vilified. How? Yeah. Why? Like, I don't understand it. Like, I really don't understand it. Like, yo, like Kanye West basically told the world that slavery was a choice. And there's still people defending Kanye West. But Eminem, oh my God, he raps spaghetti with fagetti. He's terrible. He's a corny rapper. Really? Like, okay, all right. Like, Eminem doesn't get a pass, but Kanye gets a pass. Whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how did we get there? Like, how did it become so toxic to root for Eminem?
Yeah, I think it really is a lot of revision. If I could speak, revisionist history. Yeah. It's just. I think that in the moment when Eminem was doing everything, because like it was your generation identify with the coolness of look at this guy who just does not give a shit. Will say whatever he wants to say at any time. You know, like all of that. Whereas, like, I think my generation, you know, most of my generation, removing myself from this because I don't share this opinion, but look at him as just a straight bully. Like, they look at it as, no, he just, like, bullied people and was really mean and was not a good person, you know, because he said some things that were controversial. And nowadays we can't be controversial. So anybody who was ever controversial needs to go away. Like, right. I really think that's a lot of what it is. Like, I mean, if you look at it, we could compare it to stand-up comedy, right? Like, the way stand-up comedy has gone, is a reflection of society. Society's, like, again, it's been like each year you cross one thing off that a stand-up comedian can no longer talk about, or joke about, I should say. And, I think that society has moved that way. And not only have they moved that way forward, but they've gone back and now kind of are rewriting histories and not accepting that. I think that's kind of unfair because the generation who was living through it was cool with it. So how does, a generation that wasn't living with it, kind of criticize it when they weren't involved in that time? I don't know. That might be wrong because you could take that analogy into way different extremes and it can look totally bad. But I don't know. It seems weird to, it seems like a lot of the rewriting of history just like really kind of painted Eminem in a different light than what he was. And, that's fine. I think if you don't like him, if you think that he's a horrible person, that's fine or whatever. But, you don't got to go out of your way to slander him. If there's somebody I don't like, I just kind of keep it moving. I don't say anything bad about it. I don't know. It's weird.
No, I and that's a different perspective that I had not heard, the cancel culture effect on Eminem. And I think that does play a role. I do agree with that. I do. But I just think from a hip hop perspective, like, just like within hip hop itself, because I think that a lot of the cancel culture is just kind of a broader fan base and a broader music fan.
Yeah,
I think
true.
But I think within hip hop, like just the level of just blatant disrespect where people are just like, I feel like a lot of people were waiting for Eminem to fall off so that they could say a lot of the shit that they felt back in the day. Because I think a lot of people felt like Eminem got overrated. Like, I remember when Vibe in 2008 had like the greatest living rapper and Eminem was voted #1 as the greatest. And like so many people were outraged, but I don't think they could say anything because it's like he just coming off that 3-year run. And, even Encore, right. For being a disappointing album, still sold 5 million records. So, I mean, Eminem was just huge. Yeah. So I think a lot of people were waiting for Eminem to kind of have that fall off to say like, yep, I always knew this motherfucker was overrated. And here's why. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that does play a role in it. Like, I just feel like, but I've never seen a rapper of that stature just like people go out of their way to disrespect. And I'm not even talking about his peers because I think the majority of his peers respect Eminem. Like, you don't hear Eminem Nas saying bad shit about Eminem or Jay or like, I think a lot of rappers are respectful and are complimentary of Eminem. But it's just like it's mostly just the fans, like and like media and people, media personalities. Yeah, exactly.
I think the media. I think media. The thing with media, and we are included in this, is we often maybe not have to, but do make our opinions and inform our thoughts based on what the fans are thinking. True. So I think that if fans are feeling that way, like media people have to represent, they're representing for lack of a better term, fans in hip hop when they're speaking on, is this new album good? Is this new album bad? So if, fans are saying, it's not cool and Eminem, says some controversial stuff on here, that's not okay, then a hip hop journalist would be like, well, I don't want to write an article saying that this album is good because I don't want to be roped into somebody who's supporting that part of it rather than just people are just not willing to have full conversations. Like there's a lot of complexities. I mean, we've gone through this Eminem conversation has had a lot of complexities and intricate layers to it. There's more than just a simple like black and white. It's there's a lot of gray, and so you gotta talk through those things and kind of figure those things out. And that goes to just anything, but especially when it comes to music. If an artist has one line that might be controversial, does that diminish the whole album? Does that diminish the whole song? What impact does that have? I think it's easy for people to just say, well, I'll play it safe and just disregard the whole album because of one moment or one word or one whatever. So I think that there's that. And I want to say that I feel bad for Eminem to an extent, because Eminem has shown time and time again how much he loves hip hop. And I just really feel like, this has got to be brutal for him to be, for him to go from a mega superstar who's always tried to do right by hip hop. Like Eminem has always been, supportive of the culture and always been for the culture, and he still is. But yet that same culture is kind of painting him out to be a villain.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's a really an excellent. Now, look, I'm not crying tears for Eminem. He's made lots of money, and he's
right.
He's not hurting it.
And he certainly brought on some of the stuff himself. So yeah.
I completely agree with you. Look, he's not totally blameless in this. And I know what some people are going to listen to this and say, "Oh, well, you guys are biased. You guys are Eminem fans." But like, I've had this discussion again with non-Eminem fans, right? That I respect their opinions, and they'll say, "Oh, well, he has corny lines." A lot of rappers have corny lines. Like a lot of rappers that we love have corny lines. But they get a pass. Oh, well, he's a rapidy rapper. He raps fast and he rhymes a lot of words, but he doesn't tell any stories. Like, what? Like, seriously? Like, Eminem isn't a storyteller? Like, you may not like the stories that he's told, but that's like saying Edgar Allan Poe is not a great writer. He doesn't tell great stories. He tells great them. That's fine. That's like saying you don't like the stories he's telling. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not a storyteller. Like I feel like there isn't a real reason. I just feel like it's become cool to hate Eminem, like you said. So now it's just like, well, I just don't like him. Okay. Like, and again, a lot of this stuff, he has brought on his stuff. Like he has had, some really poor albums. Like Revival was just, it even though I was a little bit more accepting of Revival than a lot of other folks were, I'll admit that Revival was his worst album by far. Like it's not even debatable at this point. You know what I'm saying? But like, again, even to that point, a lot of rappers have, like, I'll use Nas. Like I love Nas. Has Nas not had disappointing albums? Absolutely. Nostradamus is his worst album by far. I Am was disappointing. So a lot of Jay has had disappointing albums. Kingdom Come, for example. Like Jay has had, like even the great Jay-Z has had great disappointing albums. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's
that was another artist. That was another artist that I think that I was thinking of at the very beginning when you posed the question of like what great hip hop legend has been slandered to this extent, and the closest thing is Nas, and Nas hasn't been to this extent. People aren't out here canceling Nas, but you have the opinions, oh, he sucks at picking beats, oh, like he's got one good album, like this and that. Like those opinions fly. So I'm glad you brought it up. It's
mind-boggling to me. Like, oh, Nas isn't a great beat picker. Like what? like so beat picking is an art form, I guess. Like I don't know. Like because there's great rappers. There's rappers that have great beats and they don't say shit. So
right.
So is that a point taken away from them that they pick great beats, but their wordplay and their rhymes are terrible? Like I don't see that as a knock on the other way. You know what I mean? Like I don't see it like, oh, well, he picks great beats, but he sucks. Like, why is that Nas gets flat? Because he may pick beats that you don't like or don't, quote unquote, to borrow a word from FIFO, bumps in the whip. He gets flat, but I don't know. It just feels like people have gone out of their way to rewrite the history of Eminem. And I'm really interested to know why. Like I really, and I do think a lot of it is race motivated, man. I think a lot of it was Lord Jamar and in the Vlad TV interviews where he's basically said like, white people are guests in hip hop and blah, blah, blah and all that. And I think people have taken that and ran with it. And I think that goes to the point of you saying that journalists write articles basing their opinions off popular opinion of the fans. And I think a lot of fans base their opinions on the popular opinions from the media community. Like, I think that they're just like, oh, well, if Lord Jamar says that Eminem is whack, well, Eminem is whack. Like, who is Lord Jamar? Like, is Lord Jamar the Jesus Christ Messiah of hip hop? That like all verdicts that he gives and hands out is what's gospel? Like, no, like that's his opinion, and I respect Lord Jamar, but like, okay, great. Like I'm convinced. Like what? Yeah, like I don't know, man. It's just I think it's a very nuanced discussion, and I think it's a discussion that I really want to see had in a lot of different platforms. Like, why has Eminem become such a whipping boy? Like he's gotten to the level of like Vanilla Ice whipping boy status. Like and I guess that's the frustrating part, because like you said, Eminem has always been someone that has respected the culture, has treated the culture right. And is a fan. Like you can tell, like this dude loves hip hop, loves different forms of hip hop, different art, like different rappers, different styles. Like Eminem is say whatever you want to say about Eminem. Like I've even had people say, well, he screwed over Slaughterhouse, so I don't like him. Okay. Like, so his executive run is what's making you not like Eminem. All right. So do people hate Jay-Z because he wasn't the greatest Def Jam president? Like I'm confused. Like I don't know. I don't know. Exactly. It's really it's honestly frustrating sometimes, the excuses that I hear people give out on why they hate Eminem. And again, I'm biased. I'm a fan of Eminem. Maybe if I wasn't a fan of Eminem, it could be a little bit easier for me to understand, I guess. But I really don't understand. And again, the person that I bring up the most is Kanye West. Look at all the things that Kanye West has done. And I feel like there's people that still have not given up on Kanye West. But Eminem, he rhymed NyQuil with, turkey. So now he's terrible. And he's a horrible rapper forever. Like, what? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I'm glad that you see where I'm coming from with this.
Oh, 100%.
Let's move on to some basketball before we wrap up, man. Where do you see Kevin Love going?
Ooh. I mean, obviously the Portland thing is floated around a lot. Yeah. And it makes sense from just both a narrative and just a basketball perspective. But I also think Utah should really look hardly at Kevin Love, because Utah is a team that right now, Utah always has a good second half of the season when their schedule balances out. It seems to be the same story with Utah every year, is that once their schedule balances out, they pick up the wins that they're supposed to get, and then they become, as good as they're supposed to be. But right now they've been a little bit disappointing, a little bit concerning even. And, the fact that they're playing a lot of Bogdan at the power forward position makes me think that, like in the playoffs, like another big buy, like when they have to go against the Lakers, when AD plays the 4 and Dwight Howard is playing the 5, or, JaVale McGee is playing 5, or whoever, that Lakers team is big, and they'll need another body besides Rudy Gobert to really hammer that home, since they got rid of Favors. So I could see Kevin Love going to Utah. I don't know what salaries they'd have to move to make it work, but because I'm not quite sure of Utah's salary books on hand. But that's a team that I think could and should consider trading for Kevin Love. And then there really aren't that many other options, really. San Antonio is always going to be in the market for a good player if they're available. They don't care about the age. So if San Antonio can get them at the right deal, then they'll probably do it. It'll be interesting in Dallas too, but Dallas wants to keep their books clean because they're looking at a run for Giannis. So I
agree with you. I think I think there's not a lot of teams that make a lot of sense for Kevin Love right now. Now that may change as we get closer to the deadline. But just off the top of my head, I mean, definitely Portland, obviously, with the ties and to Portland and all that. But Utah's another one. I got to admit, I wasn't as high on Utah as other people were. Like, people were telling me Utah was going to be the best team in the West, and I'm just like, people debated me back and forth, like, yo, you're crazy. Like, why are you not seeing this with Utah at the beginning of the year? And I'm just like, I don't see it. Like, and I like Utah. I like Quinn Snyder. I love I love Mitchell, but I'm not ready to go there with Utah. I think they're going to be a good team and definitely be a playoff team, but I don't think that roster as currently constituted was going to win was a championship roster like other people were trying to tell me that they were.
Right.
And,
I agree with that. I think about the same with Utah.
Good. Yeah. No, I was just like, I couldn't believe how much love Utah was getting. So yeah, I definitely think Kevin Love would help that. I don't even think that's even a perfect fit just because I don't know what salaries they would have to move. And, you know, how does that affect Bogdan? I mean, I would assume Bogdanovich would have to go back in any deal, right? And he's been playing great for them. So yeah, he's been playing really good for them and he's a good player, but, so I would think that would, I think for Utah, that would be a robbing Peter to pay Paul type of trade where they'd be trading from a strength to help a weakness, and then that weakens their strength. So I don't necessarily see where there's a fit there. I do think the most obvious fit is Portland. I think Portland needs another scorer, especially a low post presence. I know Kevin Love's not the prototypical power forward inside body guy, but I mean, he's still a great rebounder. He's still a guy that I think would help Portland immensely. I think they have the pieces to make the salaries work. So I do think Portland is probably the best team right now. I agree Dallas would be an interesting fit as well. San Antonio, I'm not so sure about because San Antonio to me is still in that like no man's land right now where I don't know if they want to go for it or they just want to rebuild. I think they're still in that like, what are we doing phase? Like, are we going to just keep this as currently constituted and just try to make the playoffs again for like the 27th year in a row, whatever it is, whatever the streak they're on right now? Or they're just going to be like, you know what, I don't think they'll tear it down completely, but I do think they'll retool and say they'll trade DeRozan and Aldridge and get something back for him. So I think they're still kind of deciding where they're at on that. But I do think Kevin Love's going to be an interesting chip. We get progress in this NBA season right now. I mean, I do think he will be a very interesting piece to add to a contender. And you still think he can contribute, right? You still think
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another team that I think just from a pure basketball standpoint he would really fit on is, and I've watched Philly, but because of, you know, I think that they have potential to win a championship because of just their ability to play amazing, outstanding defense. But I think Kevin Love would help that or would fit that team more than Al Horford, even though I think at this point Al Horford's a better player because he could provide the Joel Embiid insurance and also play defense. So I don't think Philly would be like ready to pull the trigger on something like that. But Kevin Love is like in Philly, that's exactly what they need is a big that can really stretch the floor.
True. Yeah. Yeah. No, Philly's an interesting one too. That's an interesting
Milwaukee
one.
Too. I've heard
would be,
Milwaukee too.
You know what? Milwaukee's actually. I'm glad you brought up Milwaukee. I actually think Milwaukee would. I honestly think I actually like Kevin Love better in Milwaukee, honestly, than I do in Philly.
Oh yeah, me too.
I think he provides a. I think
he'd basically be
another break from.
Yeah, basically Mirotic like 3.0.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a better. I mean, honestly, he's a better Mirotic at this point. So
exactly.
I think Milwaukee would absolutely be a good fit for him. I like that fit better than I would.
Yeah, like you do Bledsoe and pick and like a pick or something, or I don't know. I'm hearing that teams want a first round pick to take on Kevin Love's contract, so maybe they do Bledsoe because they like the guards that they have on their team that aren't named Bledsoe, and for and something else, some other salary piece for Kevin Love, and maybe a pick or something, or just straight up.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have the pieces that could make it work. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about Philly, man. Philly's just one of those teams that I can never get a read on. Like some days I watch Philly and I'm like, how is this team? How is this team not better than what they are? And then and then other days I watch Philly and I'm just like, oh my God, this team has a chance to win a championship. And it's just like, it's so weird when I watch Philly. Like, it's like, I don't know what Philly team you're going to get from week to week, from game to game,
100%.
Within a game, from quarter to quarter.
Yeah,
you don't know what Philly team you're going to get. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Philly's good, but they're confusing.
Are you surprised how good the Lakers have been?
Yes, I'm surprised at their their sheer record, I should say, as far as like the quality of play that they're playing at. Not necessarily like they have a bunch of guys that like make sense in 2K, but you don't know if they make sense in real life. But I tend to believe not necessarily, but I believe in those players. Like I believe in Rondo. I believe in Dwight Howard as a role player. I believe in JaVale McGee as a role player. Like I think that all of them are. Danny Green as a role player. Like I think that all of those guys are good in their particular roles. And so I think that it is kind of aligning into place for the Lakers. The most surprising thing about the Lakers, and it makes sense because of how much they're winning, is I'm surprised that we are almost at Christmas and there's not been a single drama story about the Lakers. You know,
as a Laker fan, that is so welcoming. God, that's so welcoming.
I imagine.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I as a Laker fan, I had high hopes for this season and I had high expectations. And I thought we would be good. I didn't think we would be this good this early. And I think that a lot of that is a credit to LeBron being finally motivated. I'm so glad that he took a year off last year. LeBron finally being motivated, AD fitting in seamlessly. Vogel, who I think is not getting a lot of credit, you know, and I'll be the first to admit that, you know, I was down on the Vogel hire, but he's done a really good job, especially like LeBron and AD, those guys can wake up out of bed and know how to play basketball and be really good at it. So I'm not surprised that they've been as good as they've been, but I think Vogel deserves a lot of credit for all of the other pieces and making all the parts fit as well as they fit. And the defense, that's been the most surprising thing to start the year, has been how good and how great and dominant of a defensive team they've been to start the year. So I think that definitely gives that's credit to Vogel, man. I mean, I was one of the Laker fans that was not high on the hire. Yep. And, you know, he's been surprising. He's stayed out of the way, but he's implemented some of his vision, especially his defensive tenacity, his coaching philosophy in that side of the ball. So I look, as a Laker fan, I'm ecstatic. And the one thing about it too is that I don't even think we've played our best basketball yet. That's the crazy part. Like, I still think we have room to grow. Like, I still think we have, I mean, Kuzma, who's an X factor for me. I don't even think you've seen the best of Kuzma. He's been hurt. I think he's still trying to figure out his role on the team still a little bit still. But I think when Kuzma finally gets healthy, finally figures out his role, I think you're going to see another level of the Lakers. I really do.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think that this is what I expected the Lakers to be in January or February. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see them as their peak yet. But I expected that to take a couple months to get here. So the fact that they're already here, one can argue, does this really mean that they have a higher ceiling or that they're playing at their ceiling for a longer time? Only time will really answer that question. But yeah, I do think, like you said, I do think that they could go up another level. One of the frequent guests I have on my podcast is Tim, and he's really plugged into the Lakers. He runs a website called Basketball Index, which is a really incredible advanced analytics driven site. So if you're one of the people that likes analytics, I like it. I like to look at them. They're not the end all be all for me, but I like to look at them and just kind of see if they match what I see in my opinion, in the way I interpret things. Mm-hmm. But he has fantastic numbers, and he did a Lakers podcast. So he's very, very plugged in with the Lakers and very much a Lakers guy to the core. So I have him on to always talk Lakers. And the one thing he said was that, the LeBron James and AD pick and roll has not been as good as people expected it to be. And, and so that's another layer where they can go up another level and become an even better team. He's like, I'm surprised we've only seen like 10 lobs from LeBron to AD so far this year.
Yeah. I mean, now that you bring it up, yeah, I do think there's still room to grow there. Absolutely. And I was worried about that fit just because obviously we all know the history of LeBron and big men and how he subjected kind of the big men to be kind of spot shooters. Yeah. So I've that's what gives me hope is that I think that that relationship on the court is going to grow even better. Just because you haven't seen the full potential of it right now, and they're playing and I would argue AD's, everybody's giving LeBron MVP love, but I would argue AD's been the best player on the Lakers right now so far. I mean, I would even make that argument. I mean, he's been great. And the thing that's really impressed me is his defense, like how great he's been defensively as well. So, yeah, man, as a Laker fan, I'm ecstatic. I think the only thing that could
time to be alive.
Yeah, great time to be great time to be alive. I think the only thing that could really derail this team, honestly, is injury. I know a lot of people are worried that we're so dependent on LeBron and AD scoring a lot of points. And that's a concern to an extent. But I think that's where Kuzma being an X factor really comes in. I think Kuzma's the other guy on this team that can really take up a lot of the scoring load. And I still think he's just trying to figure out where his role is. Because you got to remember, Kuzma the last 2 years has been a starter. So now he's been relegated to kind of being a sixth man off the bench. So I think he's still trying to get used to that. And plus he's had a lot of knickknacks and injuries that has kind of derailed the start of the season. So I think once he kind of gets fully healthy and fully comfortable, I think you're going to see a better Kuzma too. So, yeah, man, like I said,
just know that the Lakers are going to be on the buyout market too, man. They don't got a lot of assets to trade, so they'll look to trade, but they're going to be one of the team. They're going to get somebody on the buyout market. They will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're going for it. I mean, this year is about championship. It's championship or bust for them. So, I definitely expect them to be very active. And that's the thing. Like, I don't even think they have that many needs, to be honest. I mean, right now they're in a position of luxury. And all of the pieces that they've brought in have all played relatively well. I mean, Rondo's played well. Caruso has really, really played well and taken his game to another level. Avery Bradley's been okay. I mean, it's been a nice addition. Danny Green's really played well. I mean, so some of the big offseason acquisitions that they've made, Dwight Howard, I mean, who saw that coming? I mean, who saw Dwight Howard being the contributor that he was on this team, that he is on this team? Who saw that coming? So, I honestly, right now, barring injuries, I don't even see them having a lot of major needs. I mean, I guess go get another point guard, but even that seems a little redundant at this point. Yeah, man, like I said, the Lakers it's fun right now being a Laker fan. Let's just knock on wood and hope that it continues.
Absolutely, man. I wish you all the best. Listen, as a Pistons fan, even though we smacked you in the finals that one year, and I'll never let you forget it. Also, we should have had another final. You know that wasn't a foul on Kareem. You know that. But anyways,
back to Trae Young.
All right, go ahead.
I'm not going there with you.
All right.
I guess we'll wrap up with Trae Young. I don't know how much credence you give to that report Bleacher came out with sometime this week about Trae Young already kind of being frustrated with the performance of the team. It kind of took me back a little bit because I don't know what the expectation of the Hawks were coming into the year. I mean, I know a lot of people were high on them and thought that they could be one of those kind of sneaky playoff teams in the East. I wasn't there with the Hawks just yet. I thought they'd be better. So I guess that is the frustration, that they're not as better as probably a lot of people thought they would be. But do you buy anything to this story, or do you think it's just kind of that time of year where people are drumming up stories for clickbait?
I think I buy it, and I buy it because I want to believe it. Like, I find it cool that Trae Young is in his second year and he wants to be competitive and he wants to win. Like, to me, I don't see that story as any type of harm, really. Like, I think it's a story that makes Trae, even if you believe it or it's not true or whatever, it makes Trae Young look good. It makes him look like he wants to win, and that's always a good thing. And that's an admirable trait in your star player. So that's cool. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, Atlanta, I never had high hopes for them this year. Like, I looked at that team and I'm like, okay, they got a couple good second and third year players, and they got some rookies who may or may not have an impact this year. And Vince Carter is still one of their best, if not their best, small forward on the roster. So that's a huge problem. No disrespect to the legend, but, at this point, if he's your best small forward option, then, your team is looking, that's not exactly a great team. So like, I think those things, like, I'm kind of blown away by how people looked at Chicago and Atlanta as these teams that were going to make the playoffs. And I was just like, huh.
I didn't understand the Chicago one. I didn't understand the Chicago one. I'm with you on that one. At least Atlanta, I could see, Trae Young taking another level. You know what I mean? Cam Reddish, people were high on Cam Reddish. Thought he was a steal. Yeah, Collins, yeah. But, I mean, Chicago, I'm like, I guess. Like, I didn't see that one, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what it was with Atlanta, but, it's cool that I guess Trae Young is looking for help, and that's always, I guess, a good thing when it comes to superstars, right? You want your superstar to want to win, even if it's their second year. That shows he's not looking at it as like it's Philly in the process where it's like, okay, we're just going to have to suck for 4 years. And I just automatically accept that, it's cool. It's cool that he wants to win now.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll sneak one more in there.
Let's do
the Knicks. Is there any hope?
Mm-hmm. Is there any hope?
Yes, no, that's the question.
Not when you have 9 power forwards. Not when you have 9 power forwards on your 13-man roster. Like, I don't know what they're doing, and they're taking away time from Mitchell Robinson, and look, they just gotta. I'm not just saying that because I have Mitchell Robinson on my fantasy squad, but you got to give Mitchell Robinson some more time. He's RJ Barrett, like that's kind of the future. You got to play those guards, figure out Ntilikina, Dennis Smith Jr., whoever. You got to figure out which one of those, or if any of those are guards that you are going to keep long term, or just let go or deal or whatever. You got to just they signed players that competed with or that are interfering with the growth process of the team, and I think that's damaging. Like, I get signing a couple veterans to make the locker room a better place. I believe in that kind of stuff, like the veteran impact on teams, on young teams. So I do believe in that. But you signed a lot of veterans that are taking a lot of minutes and opportunities away from these players, and I don't think that really any of those players are going to get or are going to be great trade assets. Like, I don't know, is Julius Randle really a great trade asset? He's playing well, and I like Julius Randle, but I think at his price, I don't know, like, is there a team out there? Is there a market out there for Julius Randle? Is there a market out there for Taj Gibson?
I think there could be. For Julius Randle, I think there could be, because he's still young enough, and I think he's still productive enough where I think a team in February who needs some scoring punch off the bench or needs another big that could kind of make plays. Yeah, or I mean, even a championship contender of that sort. Okay. I think a team like that could take a shot at Julius Randle. So I think he is an asset. Is he a guy that you just oh my God, we have to go get Julius Randle? No, but I think that if the price is right, I think he's someone that the Knicks could get something for.
Yeah, the hope is with New York. The hope for me is that if I'm a New York fan, the hope is that all these players that I signed, the Wayne Ellingtons, the Taj Gibsons, the Julius Randles, that you flip those at the trade deadline for future assets. Like, then all can be justified. If you actually get returning assets for these players, then cool. But if you just had these players on the roster and they just took opportunity from RJ Barrett, from Mitchell Robinson, from from Knox, like all of their other young guys, then okay, then it was a total failure. But if you actually, and I'm not even talking about the free agency, about how they didn't get Kyrie and KD, like that's over with. I'm not even talking about that, but just assessing how they choose to move on from that point forward by signing all these veterans. Yeah, it's great if those veterans are actually helping those players and letting those players grow, but I don't think they are. And it's great if those veterans bring back value. And I don't know if any of them really do. Like, all of those players, like, I like Taj Gibson. I like Wayne Ellington a lot. He balled out for Detroit last year. Like, I think those players, though, I don't know if teams are trading assets for them.
Those are big parts. Those are big parts. Yeah, they're not. You're not getting major assets or assets of some value for Wayne Ellington. He's a piece that you move late in the deadline just to clear some salary.
Or like a buyout market. He's like a buyout market player. Yeah. You know, like one of those players. And you know, those teams like New York and stuff, they don't get. You know, you don't get anything for buying out a player. You don't. So, you know, like I think they got the wrong veterans in terms of value. Like if you could flip a couple of these veterans into some seconds, even maybe a first, whatever, then you know what? Then good. You're building your war chest. You got more pieces to move forward with. Good. But if all these players just sit there and just take away time and development from your young players, then, you know, once again, you've made a horrible decision.
Yeah, no, listen, man. Anybody who knows me knows on the show, I'm a Laker fan, but I root for the Knicks as well. I want to see them do well. Obviously, it's the hometown team, so I want to see the Knicks do well. But I think the problem with the Knicks starts at the top. It's the head of MSG.
Absolutely.
It's Dolan. Dolan's the problem, and it seeps down below. And I have no faith in Scott Perry. Steve Mills is a joke. They don't have any direction. They don't know what they're doing. They just have no direction. Like it's like if you're watching the Knicks right now, what's their direction? They don't even know.
Yeah.
The Knicks are at the point now where they're just throwing things against the wall and hoping that it sticks. You know what? We're going to sign 9 power forwards and create a roster of 9 power forwards. It's like they don't. It's like that gimmick. It's like that business that's going out of business, and it's like, hey, you know what would be fun today? You know, we're gonna have an elephant in the showroom, right. And you know, everybody gets an elephant ride. You know, they're just throwing things against the wall and hoping that it sticks, and that's just not the way to run your basketball franchise. It just isn't. I mean, any franchise really, but it's just not a proper way to run your basketball team. So. I don't know what they're doing. I think. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that you hit on a great point. Like, you know, another thing too that Atlanta has to compare their rebuild to New York's is like Atlanta knows we want to be the Golden State. We want to shoot a lot of threes and this and that. So like they have their identity that they're going for. Like New York, just even basketball wise, the players don't fit. Like if you signed veterans that like fit the actual system that you want to implement 5 years down the line when RJ Barrett is entering his prime and, you know, and Mitchell Robinson is entering his prime. Cool. But they don't seem to have any clue what type of basketball they want to play 5 years from now. Or even 2 years from now.
They don't know. They haven't even thought that far. Honestly, they have not even thought that far ahead. They're literally just throwing things against the wall and just hoping that it sticks. You know, they're literally just throwing things against the wall and just saying, hey, maybe this will work. Maybe it doesn't work. Who knows? We're just playing it by day. Like, who knows? Yeah. And look, I wasn't anti-Fizdale getting fired just because I've never been high on David Fizdale. I think I think the basketball Twitter and basketball world wants you to believe that David Fizdale is a big time coach. I've never seen evidence of that to support that logic. But I think it almost generated more buzz and more slander on the Knicks just because of the way it was done and because it is the Knicks and nothing that they do is essentially smart. But I mean, honestly, no coach is going to be able to figure this out. I mean, it's a systemic problem. It's not a team problem. It's a systemic problem. They have people running the basketball operations that shouldn't be running basketball operations for any NBA franchise, and they have an owner who's incompetent. So as long as that's still the case, the Knicks are going to just be where they're at. And it's crazy because they have talent. They have talent. It's not like they're a talentless team. They have talent. They're just poorly ran, poorly put together. And until they figure that out, it's just going to be more of the same.
Absolutely. No argument for me.
Yeah, no, man. I wanted to touch on some basketball before we got out of here, man. Chris, man,
you got to bring the balance.
You got to bring the balance, man. Too much Eminem talk. People are getting mad about that, right? Chris, man, it's been a pleasure, man, to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, man.
Thank you, man. It's been a great honor. I'm glad to be on your podcast, man. I'm glad we could finally get this collab. I'm gonna have you on my podcast soon. We'll work something out. And I'm always here to do a feature whenever you need it. You got my number, man. Just hit me, and we'll make it happen.
Absolutely, man. I'll take you up on that offer. And anytime you want me on the podcast, either one, I'm always down, man. Before you go, please don't leave without plugging your social media, plugging the podcast, where they can find you, where they can interact with you. Go ahead and sell yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for listening. My name is Chris Platte, the host of Strictly Hip Hop and Strictly Hoop Talk. You can find those on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you consume, Google Play, wherever you consume your podcasts, you can find Strictly Hip Hop and Strictly Hoop Talk. It is one feed. Again, one covers the NBA, one covers hip hop, and I have all sorts of guests on there. It's just me and a revolving door of guests. Anyone from, Dead End Hip Hop, who I'm partnered with, to basically anybody, broadcast writers, anybody really in that in those respective worlds. And then you can find me on the social medias, Twitter and Instagram, and it's all the same handle. It's at Real Chris Platte, Real, and then ChrisPlatte. So that's where you can find me there. And once again, man, thank you for having me on the podcast. It was really fun to chop it up with you. We had some great conversations.
Yeah, no, it was a great conversation, man. I think a lot of people will definitely enjoy this. So I'm hoping to get some positive feedback from this. Yeah, and it's always fun, and hopefully it's the first of many collaborations. Hopefully,
absolutely, that's the plan.
Definitely, man. All right, guys. We're going to get up out of here. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. You can always follow the podcast on Twitter at AGS Pod, on Instagram, AGS Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at The Emmanuel Brown, Instagram, The Emmanuel Brown, Snapchat, MannyBro15, Facebook, Emmanuel Brown. Go make sure you also follow the show on Facebook, Any Given Sunday. Make sure you're part of Any Given AGS Nation as well. The schedule the next couple weeks to end the year. They're going to take a little bit of a hiatus, so I think there's going to be one more show before the end of the year. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm going to take a little bit of a vacation, a little bit of a hiatus. So I'm just trying to figure that out. I'll keep you guys posted on Twitter, the schedule of the show. So I think there'll definitely be one more episode of the podcast before the end of the year. And then that's it. You'll be without me for a week or two. So don't long for me too much. No, I'm just kidding. But no, obviously with the holidays coming up, so the schedule's going to be a little bit weird. But yeah, we'll keep you guys filled in on what's coming up on the podcast, man. As always, thank you guys for listening. I definitely will have a podcast next week. Just don't know what days, just because my schedule's a little bit iffy. So, but I'll keep you guys posted. But yeah, man, thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the podcast. For Chris Platte, I am Emmanuel Brown. We are out of here. Peace. Serious sound.
Guys, I'll make this quick so you can get back to your murder podcast or whatever you're listening to. I'm Drama from Group Chat, the #1 podcast in the world. We make cool people smarter and smart people cooler. Seriously. Our topics range from Kim Kardashian to Jeff Bezos to Donald Trump and everything in between. If you want to be entertained and educated, check us out right now in the podcast app. Just search Group Chat. By the way, the ex-boyfriend isn't the killer. It's her best friend who is. Sorry for ruining that. But now that you have a little bit more time, give us a listen.